Okay, so here's a case that was done with the new InLab 4.0. An Emacs bridge was attempted from tooth number 5 to tooth number 7. And if we flip over the Emacs bridge and look at under the intaglio surface, we notice something is seriously wrong on tooth number 7. Now tooth number 5 and tooth number 7 are the abutment teeth, and tooth number 6 is the pontic. So we look at that and we know something's wrong. The other thing that pops to my attention right away is just how the connectors between the teeth look a little bit goofy. So that's the first indication that something was probably designated wrong and the connectors were designated wrong. So if we go back to the design phase, what we can do is we can confirm the fact that the dentist chose the anatomic connector instead of intersecting connector. Now let me tell you the difference. Normally in version 4.0 or any other chairside version you've ever used, when you do a bridge or a temporary bridge, they all appear to come together like normal teeth. You know, they have nice embrasures, and that's an intersecting connector. When you choose an anatomic connector, now this is when they actually place physical connectors or bars in between the teeth, and it's usually chose for usually bridge frameworks. So because I see these connectors between the teeth, because I can double click on them and actually right click and adjust these, then I know that the dentist chose the wrong connector. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look into the scan phase, and we're going to notice that the dentist took some biogeneric copy pictures. So I'm assuming that he wanted to do the bridge in biogeneric copy, not biogeneric. So after we kind of back ourselves up and we saw all these different things, what was trying to be done was probably just a normal 3-unit Emacs bridge. So if we go back to administration, we can go ahead and just hover over the restorations to see in fact what they were called. Okay, so if I put my cursor over the top of tooth number 5, it says biogeneric individual crown. If I put it over tooth number 6, it says biogeneric individual crown. If I put it over tooth number 7, it says biogeneric individual pontic. So here's our main issue. Obviously, when we had that spike coming out of tooth number 7, it's because it was called a pontic and not an abutment. If we put it over 6, what was supposed to be the pontic was called biogeneric individual crown, and then tooth number 5 was supposed to be biogeneric individual crown. Now there's supposed to be biogeneric copy, and obviously tooth number 6 is the pontic, and tooth number 5 and 7 are the abutments. So when we go ahead and when we go to this stage, this is where we're going to be at. We'll go ahead. The first thing we'll do is we just have to hit edit, and I notice these two little bars between the teeth, and it says design mode anatomic, design mode anatomic. So this is the reason we're getting those big huge connectors through those. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to choose bridge restoration. You always want to go right to left. We're going to choose crown, biogeneric copy, and choose tooth number 5 and tooth number 7. Okay, now we're going to go back and choose pontic, biogeneric copy, tooth number 6. Then we're going to choose connector, intersection, and as soon as I turn intersection, I'm going to have to go ahead and click on both these connectors, and it turns it 90 degrees so you know that you have the right connectors. I'll go ahead and hit OK, but first let's go ahead and hover over the top so we know that we got things correct. So after I went ahead OK, I can just put my cursor over the top of the restoration, and it says in fact tooth number 5, crown biogeneric copy, tooth number 6, pontic biogeneric copy, tooth number 7, crown biogeneric copy, and we know in fact our connectors are right. So then we can go ahead, click on the model. The first thing I'm going to do is back up to the trim step. I want to check the model axis, make sure that is lined up correctly, hit OK. And the next thing I'm going to do, and this is just from experience working with the actual pontic space when doing full anatomic bridges, is we need to go ahead and edit that area because it's just not going to fit well. You could potentially have a space there. So first thing I'm going to do is just on that pontic area, we're going to go ahead and smooth out to make everything nice and smooth in that pontic region. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to choose Form Remove. I'm just going to kind of get an idea where that gingival zenith is going to be. And we're just going to get it really small and just outline the gingival zenith. Okay. Now we'll go ahead and do the same around here just to get an idea of where that pontic is going to go. And then I might go back one last time and just smooth it out. Okay, so we kind of formed our pontic space a little bit smoother, which is going to make things easier. I'm also going to go to the biocopy. I noticed from looking at the case before that there's some rough areas. Might as well, since he took the opposing, might as well go ahead and smooth some of this out just to get better proposals. It's not going to really hurt a whole lot. Okay, that looks good. So we can go ahead and move forward. Now the next step is going to be to draw the margins for all three. You always know the margin because on the bottom it'll tell you which tooth to draw first. So we're going to draw the margin on tooth number 5. When you're done drawing tooth number 5, we'll go ahead, click tooth number 6 on the bottom, and we'll manually draw tooth number 6. Remember, we outlined where we wanted that margin to go, where our gingival zenith is going to be. Okay, and then we'll click on tooth number 7 and go ahead and get that margin laid down. Okay, so once the margins are laid down, we'll go ahead and hit Define Bridge Insertion Axis. That in fact looks good. Because the bridge insertion axis for the whole bridge as a whole looks great, I don't need to define them individually. They seem to draw pretty well. And then we'll go ahead and draw our 3 copy lines starting with number 5. Okay, so we got the copy line drawn on 5, 6, and 7. The last thing that I'll do in this copy phase is we'll throw up our display options, throw up our upper jaw, just to make sure none of our copy lines are going below the level of the actual margin. So that looks good. 6, put on the upper, looks good. 5. We're going a little bit below where we need to be here, so let's go ahead and adjust this. Okay, so that looks good. We'll go ahead and hit the green arrow. Now that's going to bring us to our parameters. So we need to go ahead and set the parameters for all the different teeth, 5, 6, and 7. I'm not going to go through those at this point. You can look at the other videos when they're up for that. The one thing that I will tell you is when you're looking at parameters for the pontic area, we have no occlusal offset. So that's why I smooth out that pontic area. That's why I'm putting the gingival spacing at -400 to push it down a little bit, just to make sure that I create a nice tight area against that pontic. When adjusting the occlusion, we're going to have to be very, very careful to make sure that we have nothing really in occlusion, because occlusal offset's going to be set at 0. You could technically call it a crown in that spot, but then you have a much more difficult time actually controlling the emergence profile and the adaptation to the gum tissue. So it's best to keep it a pontic. So once you adjusted all 3 of these, we'll go ahead and hit OK, and we'll get our proposal for all 3 of these in biogeneric copy. Okay, so here's our initial proposal on the bridge. Looks pretty good compared to the wax up. We can go ahead and turn on our display options to see that it's pretty much a perfect match. A couple things that we're going to want to do here. First off, we already told you that there is no occlusal offset, so we definitely want to adjust this area on tooth number 6. So there's no occlusion. We'll go to tooth number 5. You can adjust this however you like. Make sure there's no thin spots. That looks good. Tooth number 7, looks like we've got a little bit of a thin spot here. We'll go ahead and take that out as well there. Looks good. And the very last thing we're going to have to check is the connectors. Now, in order to check the connectors, you'd like to see them at least 10 millimeters when doing full contour Emax bridges. We go down and actually click on the connector. If we click on the connector, you'll see 10.61. Click on this one, you'll see 12.92. So we're well within the range of good connectors. Now you'll notice that these are intersecting quite a bit. We've got a lot of overlap between there. If we're actually doing multi-layer, this would probably not work. We'd probably have to redesign so it was more ideal. But since we're doing full contour, this is fine. It's giving us fat connectors. And when we go to actually do the adjustments, I would actually mill this out and then maybe just use some discs and some burrs to open up some of those gingival embrasures and those occlusal embrasures just to make it look a bit better. Okay, so there we go. We'll go ahead and hit mill and we'll check out the mill preview. Okay, so there it looks much better. That looks good. We'll go ahead and check the model box, make sure there's no binding. That looks good. You can see we've got some pushing through the tissue. That's good. I'd rather have it like that and to be able to adjust it a little bit. And if I wanted to go ahead and work on that pontic and make it even a little bit more circular and ovate, very easy to do. Obviously can't do it in the mill preview. We'd have to go back to design, and we'll go ahead and turn on our circular shape. You'll notice nothing is happening because it's not activated, so we'll go ahead and double click on that tooth, and we can certainly use that circular shape to go ahead and make that a little bit more circular, just to give yourself more room with a burr, so to speak, to make that an ideal emergence. Because it's easy to take away. The very last thing in the world that you want is for it to be short. So I'll usually do that, then go ahead, put on my smooth tool, and then just smooth it out. Okay? So I like that quite a bit better. Gives me some room. I know I'm not going to be short. We'll go back to the mill preview, and we're all set to mill and finish this case. So hopefully that clarifies this case a little bit, kind of runs you through a lot of the in-lab software, especially with 3-unit anatomical bridges.